We've all made a deal or a promise at some point, but what happens when one side just doesn't hold up their end of the bargain? Now, when we're talking about massive commercial contracts, a broken promise can mean millions and millions of dollars. So the big question is, when is a breach of contract so bad that you can just walk away from the whole deal? Well, a really famous case about a very, very unlucky ship gives us the answer.
So let's set the scene. Our story kicks off with what should have been a pretty standard 2-year contract to charter a ship. The Hong Kong Fur Shipping Company rented out their vessel to another company. But honestly, from the very moment it set sail from Liverpool, this entire voyage was just destined for trouble.
So just how bad was it? Well, first off, the ship itself, the Hong Kong Fur, was old. And the crew, they were way too small and had no idea how to operate its old-fashioned machinery. And to top it all off, the chief engineer was a drunk. As you can imagine, this led to just constant engine problems and major delays. All in all, the ship was out of commission for a staggering 20 weeks just for repairs.
Okay, so faced with what felt like endless delays, the company chartering the ship, Kawasaki, finally had enough. They canceled the contract. But this move raised a huge legal question. Were they actually allowed to do that? Or did they just commit a massive breach of contract themselves by walking away?
To figure that out, we need to open up the legal toolbox of the time. You see, traditionally, every single promise inside a contract was shoved into one of two boxes. It was either a condition or it was a warranty.
And the difference is all about what you can do about it. If someone breaches a condition, that's an absolutely essential part of the deal. It's so serious that the innocent party can just rip up the whole contract and sue for damages. But if they breach a warranty, a less important term, the contract has to continue. You can only sue for damages. Getting this wrong has absolutely massive consequences.
Here's a great way to think about it. Conditions are the cake. They're the fundamental substance of the deal. Warranties, they're just the icing on top. I mean, you can have a cake without icing, but you can't have icing without a cake, right? Getting this distinction right is everything.
All right, so let's get back to our problem ship, the Hong Kong Fur. The contract said the ship had to be seaworthy. The big puzzle for the court was, which box does that promise fit into?
So, was this promise of seaworthiness the cake, or was it just the icing? If it was a condition, the cake, then the charterers were totally right to terminate. But if it was just a warranty, the icing, then they were in a world of trouble for ending the contract when they shouldn't have.
And here is the fundamental problem. A breach of seaworthiness could mean almost anything. It could be something super trivial like a single missing life preserver, or it could be a catastrophic flaw in the hull that was going to sink the ship from day one. How can one single term cover such a massive range of possibilities and still be neatly classified as either critical or minor before anything has even happened?
Well, the court looked at this and realized the old two-box system was just too rigid. It didn't work here. So their solution was a total game changer, a landmark innovation in contract law. They created a third category called the innominate or intermediate term.
So, an innominate term isn't labeled cake or icing from the start. Instead, the court basically takes a wait-and-see approach. After a promise is broken, it looks at the actual consequences and asks, how serious was the damage? The remedy you get then flows directly from the effect of that breach.
This right here is the crucial legal test that came out of the case phrased by Lord Justice Diplock. The key question is no longer about the label on the promise, but about the outcome of breaking it. Did the breach deprive the innocent party of substantially the whole benefit of the contract?
Or to put it much more simply, the court is asking one basic question. Is the whole deal ruined now? If the breach is so bad that the main purpose of the contract is totally destroyed, then yeah, the innocent party can terminate. But if it's not, they can only claim damages.
So, armed with this powerful new legal tool, what did the court finally decide in the case of the Hong Kong Fur?
In a twist that probably surprised a lot of people, the court decided that Kawasaki, the charterer, did not have the right to terminate the contract. By walking away from the deal, they were the ones who are now in breach. But why? Well, it came down to the numbers. While those 20 weeks of delays, that's about 5 months, were really serious, the contract was for 24 months. That meant the ship was still available to them for the other 19 months.
So, applying that new test, the court concluded that the charterers were not deprived of the substantially whole benefit of the deal. Sure, they lost some benefit, absolutely,
but they still had the ship for the vast majority of the contract period. Their proper move was to sue for damages to cover their losses from all those delays, not to tear up the entire agreement.
And this landmark case created a really interesting, lasting tension in contract law. You see, this intimate term approach allows for a lot of fairness by looking at what actually happened in the real world. But it sacrifices certainty, because now businesses can't really know for sure if they can walk away from a deal until a court decides after the fact. And that leaves us with this critical question. In the world of commerce, what's really more important? The flexibility of fairness or the predictability of certainty?